the chosen one. Be brave, Professor. Be brave like my mother.
How do you feel?
Excellent. Really excellent.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. We're covering Chapter 28, Flight of the Prince. Elizabeth is with us.
Hi everyone.
And this is a short, but very action-packed chapter, and it's one of my favorite chapters in the entire series. But that's more of my vibe and what I'm interested in personally.
Yeah,
because
you like the action stuff.
It's so action-packed, which is just great.
That's funny because I'm kind of the opposite. I think I prefer the chapters, like my favorite chapters are the ones where it's just Harry and Dumbledore talking.
Those are intriguing chapters, but I'm just enthralled by the idea of wizards dueling, that it just sucks in my attention, and the chapter goes by really, really quickly. I mean, it is 13 and a half-ish pages, give or take, but it just flies by because you're like, eyes fluttering sentence to sentence, being like, what's going to happen next?
It'd be a cool, like, one-shot in a movie or TV show, because it is just like battle and following Harry through it.
For sure. This scene is also one of the reasons why I dislike the Six movie so much. So yes, if there is any future director or screenwriter or filmmaker in general who wants to shoot this scene as a one-shot with smoke and dust and destruction and chaos, and you might not be able to see which exact character is which, that's okay. Like, actually shoot the scene chaotically, and I think it would be fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's a challenge. One-shots are always a challenge, but I would love to see that. But before we get to the actual chapter, we do have a couple of shout-outs to get to. And the first one is from Ava, who left a comment on Sorcerer's Stone, Chapter 1.
All the way back in the beginning.
The Boy Who Lived. And Ava goes, I'm a Hufflepuff.
Well, Ava, I'm glad you got sorted into a good house. Although, I admit, I'm a Ravenclaw. We're not in the same house.
We're not. Although, I guess if you go into multiple houses, my first is Ravenclaw, my second would be Hufflepuff.
I don't know what my second would be.
You've never done that BuzzFeed quiz?
I mean, I have,
I'm sure you
but
have.
I don't remember.
I think I remember which one you
What
came out
was
as.
my second one?
Second, I think, was Slytherin for you.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Me and Jen and I could, like...
If I remember correctly, I think Slytherin was your second. But anyway. Yeah, thank you, Ava, for the comment and letting us know which house you are. Hufflepuffs do get a mention in this chapter. Mm-hmm. So we will get some Hufflepuff reactions to all of the stuff going on in the castle. The second comment is a very, very recent one from Chapter 24, Sectum Sempra. And it's from frequent contributor AV.
Hey.
So, the comment. AV says, yes, I agree that Snape was nearby as he was keeping an eye on Draco. And AV also loves the theories about the bloody axe that we gave. And that's why you should always tune in to Hogwarts, the podcast, for bloody axe theories. Thank you.
Can't get that anywhere else.
No. Yeah, we had some fun coming up with the bloody axe theories. We were a little disappointed that our theories, I think, were better than the actual...
Yeah, I don't know if there is an actual reason behind
I
the bloody
take that
axe.
back. I'm sure the actual reason is interesting because it's a bloody axe. I'm sure whatever happened in the halls of Hogwarts that day was interesting. We just don't know what it was. Anyway.
I'm trying to think of the most lame reason an axe would have blood on it.
Was Professor Sprout working on a particularly unique plant and, like, axed off one of the, like, tentacles or one of the limbs of the plant and it just was blood?
See, I'm thinking, like, Fred and George had their nosebleed nougat and they just, like...
Sneezed over the axe? Again, thank you for visiting us for our bloody axe theories. We do have an interesting chapter to get to, so we will get into the chapter. The chapter starts off with Harry reacting to the scene that he just witnessed, and him in shock and utter horror at the idea that Dumbledore might be dead.
I like how it said, like, he could tell that the spell was broken. Like, he doesn't have the full body bind anymore because he can't move. Mm-hmm. But he's still just completely paralyzed because it's like you said, the shock is just engulfing.
Yeah. While he's thinking about what he's feeling, Snape is like, we gots to go. Like, we gotta get out of here. So Snape and the Death Eaters exit the astronomy tower. And this is about the time that Harry kind of shakes out of his just complete shock trance and petrifies. He petrifies the last Death Eater who's walking out of the astronomy tower.
He also takes off his invisibility cloak, and I do not understand the logic for that one.
Honestly, I think logic has gone out the window at this point. It's all reactionary. He's thinking, I need to catch him. Because he's thinking...
Well, yeah, he was like, if I get to Dumbledore and I get to Snape, somehow I can reverse what just happened.
If I have the two of them together, I can make this work. So he's like, forget this thing. He's probably thinking of it as like a blanket or something like that.
Yeah, but the number of times Dumbledore told him, like, keep your invisibility cloak on you.
You're also sprinting. He's a 16-year-old boy who's grown quite a bit since our book 1 days.
Yeah, but no one's going to be paying attention to, like, shoes running on the ground.
Maybe, but he's quicker without having to have that over the top of him. I think he's like, let me sprint and go try to catch this. So he petrifies the one Death Eater trying to leave the astronomy tower and then walks over him. And thus begins Harry's chase of Severus Snape. And once he gets to the bottom of the stairs, he gets to this corridor that's all dust, and the center of it, I think, is caved in, or at least half caved in, and there is a battle raging in this corridor.
Yeah, there's blood on the floor, like, everywhere.
Yeah, and you can't really see what exactly is going on, nor is he really stopping long enough to actually figure that out. He's so focused on this one goal. So he's trying to sprint through this battle that's happening. I'm gonna quickly run through some of this, and then we can double back and kind of talk about it a little bit. So as he gets to the bottom of the staircase, he's immediately attacked. Greyback jumps onto Harry, and Harry can smell all that blood and dirt and just that Greyback horrifying vibe that he's got. But Harry quickly petrifies him and throws off the heavy werewolf and continues his chase. During that chase, he steps over 2 unidentified bodies that are face down in a pool of blood. Again, here's where he will figure that out later. Keep going. He witnesses Ginny in a duel with Amicus, one of the Death Eaters that was up in the astronomy tower. And Amicus is firing Crucio spells at Ginny repeatedly until Harry fires Impedimenta at Amicus and sends him flying into a wall. Then you get a scene where Ron, McGonagall, and Lupin are all each battling a separate Death Eater. One-on-one, the 3 of them. We later find out that McGonagall is specifically dueling Electo, who's Amicus's sister. So you got that whole dynamic going. And Harry also witnesses Tonks dueling an enormous blonde Death Eater who's firing curses wildly around, not really caring where they go or what they do. And Harry,
I feel like that's half of the reason why, like, the ceiling was falling in and all that stuff.
Probably. Harry ends up flinging a hex at him, which staggers him a bit before he eventually recovers and joins the fleeing Snape and Draco. So, that's the scene of the battle that we get in the corridor. What's your take on some of these matchups, some of these pairings?
I think this is evidence that Felix is doing its magic, literally. I don't know if Ginny, as great of a fighter as she is and as talented as she is, really should be able to be dodging Crucio as many times as she does.
I think Amicus describes her as dancing. You can't dance like this forever. So that would certainly imply that she's had some Felix, and she's getting lucky inspiration on where to happen to be. But she's talented in her own right.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think there should have been more than 2 bodies on the ground if Felix was not in play.
There might be, we just didn't see it.
The fact that, like, Greyback goes and attacks Harry, I feel like is pretty bold. Because I would think that Voldemort would have given instructions, like, he alone wants to take down Harry Potter. So the fact that he attacked him shows his greed for just going after children and just the bloodthirst that he has. I thought it was interesting that Harry could take him down with that, like, paralyzing charm. But yeah, it's chaos.
Yeah, it's I think the first jarring moment to me in this scene is the idea that Ron is dueling next to Professor McGonagall, who's dueling next to Lupin.
Yeah.
And it goes so quickly. He, like, sees it, he acknowledges it, and then he goes past, and you're like, wait, I want to see how that goes.
Imagine, like, being McGonagall, like, I'm a teacher, here's a student, I should be being like, get out of here, protect them. But I can't, and almost actually appreciate his assistance with battling the Death Eaters.
Ron might be the one who alerted McGonagall to this whole process. Because remember, him and Hermione were given the Marauders map as well. Me saying that just now, we don't see Hermione in this scene.
No.
She is not taken note of. So that's alarming, I think.
It could be that, like, he then told McGonagall and she was the one to alert the Order.
Yeah.
Although maybe Tonks was wandering around the castle again and happened to see them. Who knows?
Wandering around the castle is one thing. To be in a specific corridor, in a specific part of the castle, and then how do we all get there without causing such a ruckus that you're endangering other kids? Mm-hmm. It's a problem. But when I read this chapter, I remember reading this sentence and I'm like, oh, Ron is dueling next to McGonagall. That's so cool. Wait, Remus is here. When did Remus get here? Like, what's going on with Remus? Like, it was just such an exciting one sentence that just kind of sparks all of this imagination in you. At least it did in me. Let us know if, you get as pumped about this battle as I do. But just the notion of those three dueling together excites me. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. That's an interesting three to have, in my opinion. But anyway.
McGonagall taught Lupin, right?
Yes.
So this is technically two students.
Two of her It's 3 generations of Hogwarts right there. Yeah. But I imagine McGonagall's like, yeah, Lupin's okay.
He's an adult.
Yeah.
Literally an adult. Ron, get to bed.
Well, speaking of students being involved, we get other scenes of the chaos as Harry continues on. He finds Neville on the ground, quite pale, and clutching his stomach. And he stops for Neville. He's like, Neville, are you good? Are we okay? And Neville's like, yeah, I'm all right. Like, yeah, I'll figure it out. Keep going.
He says Snape and Malfoy ran past. He's like, oh yeah, I know. I'm chasing them. That's literally what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, and this is where he fires the hex at the large blonde Death Eater who's just like randomly firing things in all directions.
Well, that's the one who's fighting Tonks.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I mean, if you're Tonks, like, just think about that for a second. You're dueling someone who's so chaotic in their movements. Mm-hmm. Like, you have to be on the offensive and you got to try to hit him and disable him. But also, you're like, I don't know where this guy's going to fling one next. Mm-hmm. I don't know what collateral damage he's going to cause. And I don't know if I'm going to get randomly hit. But, like, there's a lot you have to take into account when you're...
Yeah, because if he's misfiring spells everywhere and literally destroying the corridor, stuff could be falling from the ceiling or falling on top of you from the side.
And it said some of the spells were ricocheting off the walls.
I mean, they were talking about the spells even hitting paintings and the portraits reacting to them. Like, they were running away from them to go into other portraits. Which does make me wonder, like, if a spell hits a portrait, other than maybe potentially destroying the painting, does it have any effect on it?
If the painted individual was part of the painting that got destroyed,
like, does that destroy their lives?
I would assume so.
You know,
right?
So.
But man, this must provide such portrait gossip for like the next 10 years. Like, right? Like,
war stories. Like,
yeah, kind of. Like, can you imagine a portrait like 30 years from now going like, man, you remember that one night at Hogwarts? That was nuts.
Not a night to be drinking up all of the wine from that one painting.
Or do you heckle? You're just there like, Nice shot there, Tonks. What are you doing, Amicus? Wow. Because remember, speaking of students and Lupin and Ron, Amicus and Electo were both
Previous
students.
students, too,
And
yeah.
you'd assume the vast majority of these Death Eaters once roamed these halls as students, too. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. But anyway, Harry leaves Neville once he's assured that Neville will be okay. And he continues his chase to the front doors, and he blasts through a group of confused Hufflepuffs who are all coming out of their common room being like, what's going on? We've heard rumor that there's some stuff going on. And then Harry's like, he's got blood on him, he's got dust on him, he looks disheveled, and he's like bolting towards the front doors.
What I also like about this is the imagery. He said originally he wasn't sure if the Death Eaters were going to go back to the room of requirement and escape out through the vanishing cabinet again, but he saw bloody footprints going towards the front door, so he's like, okay, like I literally have my path in front of me to follow, and if there's enough blood to be stepping in to leave bloody footprints, that again shows just how bad this battle is going.
Well, it kind of goes from those two people that were face down in a pool of blood. He steps over them.
Yeah,
Like,
there's
he
no
steps
time
on them.
to see who they even are or
He
which
didn't even
side
know they
they're
were
on.
down there until he stepped on them. And then it was like, well, something is squishy underneath me. And then he looks and is like, oh no. Like, this is bad. He gets through the blood on the walls and the rubble everywhere and the hourglasses being broken and all the rubies from the Gryffindor one on the ground.
Okay, I really like that imagery too because it reminds me of blood just dripping down.
Of course you do.
Literally, blood is being spilled. It's like
Well,
the rubies. The rubies are being spilled.
Literal blood is being spilled,
I
too.
know, but it adds to that imagery, so I like it.
So he gets through all of that and gets out onto the grounds. And he realizes that Hagrid has now engaged Death Eaters outside of his cabin. And specifically, he's going up against the giant blonde Death Eater. And
Who is not as giant as Hagrid.
not as giant as Hagrid, and they are trying to put Hagrid down. And they are having a struggle with it. Harry assumes it's obviously the giant blood within him and his abnormally large size that is giving him some resistance to what the Death Eaters are flinging at him. And I could only imagine being a Death Eater trying to attack him. And we kind of talked about this a little bit in Order of the Phoenix, where Umbridge tries to arrest Hagrid.
Right.
And
It doesn't
like,
work very well to attack
It doesn't
Hagrid.
work very well, and you have to be like, I don't know if this is a good idea to be like in close proximity to Hagrid trying to take him down. You know, I'd be distance, like put some distance between me and Hagrid.
Well, especially when he sets his hut on fire. And
Yeah.
that's one way to definitely anger him. I mean, Fang's inside.
Yeah, the Death Eaters end up lighting his hut on fire with Fang inside, which Hagrid is not pleased about. So, but once again, Harry's like, I can't get distracted. I have to keep on this chase of Snape. And Harry overtakes Amicus and Electo, really for the second time upon this whole chase, because for the first time he was still in the castle and he took a shortcut route and was able to get ahead of Amicus and Electo as they were escaping the castle. As he was looking at Neville, they got ahead again, and he ends up overtaking them for the second time by sending an impedimenta jinx at one of them, knocking them to the ground and then tripping the other one in the process. So he got a 2-for-1 deal on that impedimenta jinx. There was a lot of chaos in the castle and now outside of the castle as well.
I do like the franticness of it because he knows if he doesn't reach Snape and Malfoy quickly enough, they're going to be able to be off the grounds and be able to disapparate. So it is almost like a ticking time bomb of like, the number is going down to 0 and you have to run faster. You can't be distracted by Hagrid. You can't be distracted by bodies on the floor. You can't be distracted by spells being hit your way. Like, you just have to go.
Think of how fast this kid has had to run to get from the topmost of the tallest tower, the astronomy tower,
All the way to the ground.
all the way to the grounds. Now we're by Hagrid's hut.
Yeah.
Like, this kid has been tearing it up for however long it's taken. And I know he took a shortcut in the castle, but still,
Yeah.
you're trucking it.
Yeah.
You're moving to get there. So Harry is like, He's exhausted, but he's going purely on adrenaline at this point. Mm-hmm. So now we get to the next part of this chapter. And Harry sees Snape off in the distance. And he shoots a curse at him, which narrowly misses. And Snape turns around and faces him from about 20 yards away. And for those picturing 20 yards, honestly, that isn't that far apart, honestly. Like, Harry's made up quite a bit of ground. They're able to get a pretty good look at each other, and if they wanted to get a good curse off, they're well within range.
Well, it just shows, like, I mean, Harry's magic towards Snape, all the spells he tries to get at him seem to be missing.
It's interesting, though, in that back and forth, because you get Harry, like you said, attempts a lot. He attempts Crucio twice. He attempts an unforgivable curse twice.
Which is the second time he's ever done that.
And Snape deflects it fairly easily, and then says, and I don't even consider this a taunt. It's a strong statement of, you haven't got the nerve or ability to pull that off. Like, don't even try. Mm-hmm. And then Harry attempts Incarcerus, and Snape lazily flicks that one away. And then this is where Harry says, fight back, you coward. And then Snape counters with, coward. Your father would never attack me unless it was 4 versus 1. What would you call him?
Yeah.
What do you take from that statement?
It shows how much coward gets under his skin.
The memories that we've seen, granted there's a lot more to Snape and James's time at Hogwarts than just the handful of memories that we've seen, but to Snape's point, in the memories that we've seen, James has always been backed up by either Sirius, or Sirius and Lupin, or Sirius, Lupin, and Pettigrew.
Well, let's come back to his worst memory with those 3 in a few minutes, because I do have a comment on it.
Fair enough. There's obviously a lot of contempt between the two. Harry then tries Stupefy and Impedimenta. Snape blocks both of them. He says, until you learn to keep your mouth shut and mind closed.
See, I don't see that as a taunt as much as a teaching moment.
I agree with you. This is the 2 comments I've said. You haven't got the nerve or the ability. And until you learn to keep your mouth shut and mind closed are more instruction-based statements where he's just like, why are you even trying this?
Yeah, like you're going to fail regardless because I can know what you're doing before you do it every single time. You're an open book.
Yeah. And Harry gets hit from behind. Mm-hmm. And he describes what I could only imagine was the Cruciatus curse that he got hit by. Mm-hmm. Sudden, extreme, almost unbearable pain is what he feels. And then Snape, oddly enough, stops the Death Eater from torturing Harry further and says that apparently the orders are Harry is the Dark Lord's only.
We are to leave him. Leave him alone.
Well, you've also seen just from the last chapter and the beginning of this chapter, Snape is firmly in control. Mm-hmm. Like, he seems to be leading this mission because all of the Death Eaters are taking their cues from him.
Well, I wonder if this is his mission. Because, I mean, one, we know he made the promise to protect Malfoy. He did that to Malfoy's mother. 2, he's in the castle, so Malfoy would be able to alert him the fastest that he has succeeded with the Vanishing Cabinet. I know Malfoy doesn't want to share the glory or anything like that, but if Snape really has been following him as much as we think and paying attention to him as much as we think, then he would know and be able to recruit people very, very quickly.
Before we get to the next bit, I just want to double back really quick and say that, you know, Harry calls Snape coward multiple times in this chapter. You know who I think the real coward is? The guy who just hit Harry in the back with a spell. At least Snape, like, faced up, you know, and went to face. This coward in the back was like, oh, Harry's distracted. I'll get him now.
All's fair in love and war, I guess.
I suppose, but that's the cowardness. So, this is where we get what I can only describe as a legendary moment in the Harry Potter series. Harry, filled with blind rage, yells Sectum Sempra, and then tries silently Levi Corpus, just mere feet from Snape. Like, we're feet away.
Quote, the man he now hated as much as he hated Voldemort himself.
Which is, that's a statement. Mm-hmm. That's a real statement. Mm-hmm. But, upon Harry yelling Sectum Sempra and trying Levi Corpus, Snape, showing rage of his own, turns and goes, no, Potter. You dare use my own spells against me. I invented them. I, the Half-Blood Prince.
Chapter title and title of the book.
Book
and all
title.
That.
We get the book title, and we get the answer to the mystery of who the Half-Blood Prince is. Mm-hmm. Severus Snape.
I will say it is impressive that he invented these two spells.
Of course.
I mean, granted,
yeah.
yes, it's just literally combining Latin and understanding Latin.
Well,
but
it's more than just knowing Latin, because you have to invent the wand work.
Yeah, that counter
with
curse
it and the counters to it.
Yeah.
And, like, there's a lot that goes into it.
But in general, I feel like experimentation where you can create brand new spells and who knows, maybe also brand new potions. That's impressive.
Yeah, no, I think if we're this far in the book, I think it's pretty safe to say that Snape's a smart guy. Mm-hmm.
Now, going back to the memory real quickly before we get to his rage, I feel like this adds another layer to that memory that Harry sees in book 5, where James does use Levi Corpus against him, and it's like, if your own spell that you invented gets used on you by your worst enemy and he reveals your underwear in front of like a large chunk of the school, how horrible of an experience. Like, no wonder he tried to hide that away. Like, that's horrible. And just I guess like knowing that your spell is out there, I can imagine a period of time being like, yeah, cool, I invented that. But once other people start to learn it without necessarily realizing who invented it, I wouldn't like that feeling.
Levi Corpus, I think, is fine. It's the other one.
Yeah, the other one, I mean, I doubt got out as much. But Levi Corpus, I could just imagine walking down the halls and everyone using it on each other and smirking a little bit. Mm-hmm. But then when you see people that you don't like using your spell, then it's like, ugh.
I wonder how much Sectum Sempra has gotten out. Like, do other Death Eaters even know that? Or is this like something that Snape tries to keep
Well, maybe he saw
real
how
close?
like Levi Corpus became a trend and was like, I need to keep this one under wraps.
Well, like I said, Levi Corpus is one thing. But this could be one of his... I don't want to call it a secret weapon, because it's not a non-verbal spell like Levi Corpus. You shout it out, and then you obviously see the after effects. But I don't know. It's interesting. I wonder how many people actually do know the intricacies of this. And clearly, Snape was not happy when Harry used it.
No, because trademark Snape.
Yeah, but I think it's also one of those things where, like, where did you find this? Mm-hmm. And how? How do you know this?
Well, I think that's how he knows to pull out Half-Blood Prince. Because even though he never got the book, he never saw Harry with the book.
He figured that's the only place he could have
knows.
found it.
Yeah.
So, Harry, who's probably quite frustrated at this point, because everything he's got in his tank to throw at Severus Snape has been pretty easily diffused.
Yeah.
So he's just like, kill me. Kill me like you killed him, you coward. Mm-hmm. And then Snape replies with, don't call me coward.
I like
all caps.
I like the
All caps.
quote, too, with it. His face was suddenly demented, inhuman, as though he was in as much pain as the yelping, howling dog stuck in the burning house behind them. So clearly, like, coward, again, it...
Heavy trigger.
Yes.
Heavy trigger for
Very
Snape.
much so.
So much that Snape was like, you know what? I'm going to hit this kid hard. Mm-hmm. And he hit Harry with a whip-like spell that really knocked Harry for a loop. Knocked him down. He had white-hot pain come across him. His wand went flying.
There were like bursts of light in front of him. Makes it hard to see in the darkness.
Snape got him good.
Mm-hmm. Buckbeak took offense to that.
Buckbeak comes out of nowhere and attacks Snape. and harasses Snape until Snape eventually gets across the gates and disapparates. Mm-hmm. And Harry doesn't even know he's gone until he finds his glasses, finds his wand, stands up, and just sees Buckbeak circling the gates.
Buckbeak is a top-notch attack dog.
He's a little bit better than an attack dog. So Buckbeak is a problem, and we just saw how formidable Snape is, and if he's struggling with the creature above him. But Harry's attention now turns, with Snape and Malfoy gone, his attention now turns to Hagrid. And he learns that Hagrid and Fang are both okay.
I love that she includes that, because you know all the audience is like, don't kill the dog.
Well, he doesn't see Hagrid immediately. And even him, he's like, oh no, not him. Mm-hmm. Not him. And I can't lose him too. I can't lose Hagrid. And then Hagrid comes out of the flaming hut with Fang in arm. And then Harry tries. He tries his best to tell Hagrid what's going on. And Hagrid is believably disbelieving. Is that a thing? Believably disbelieving?
I think he is as much distracted by everything that just happened to him as he is just not wanting to hear what Harry has to say. Because what Harry has to say is too painful to process.
It's too unbelievable to process. Mm-hmm. I'm like, honestly, if you heard this and you're in Hagrid's point of view, you're like, no, I don't know what you saw, but that can't possibly be true. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, as weird as this might sound, a very reasonable response from Hagrid of just being like, yeah, I know Death Eaters were here, and, you know, Snape has to be like, this has to be part of his mission, go with them. But you're telling me Snape killed Dumbledore? No, mm-hmm. that can't be. You just misunderstood what actually happened, because there's no way. So Hagrid and Harry walk up to the castle, and they walk up to the astronomy tower, and there's already a group congregating underneath the astronomy tower, and they file their way through a path that students have allowed to form. And Harry starts realizing, as he walks up to Albus's body and kneels beside it, and it's spread out on the ground, and arms and legs are at weird angles, and there's a little bit of blood, and the spectacles are a little bit off, and he realizes that never again would Albus speak to him. Never again would he be able to help him.
He called it an enormous and incomprehensible truth.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah, I mean, as a reader, I still remember my first time reading it and feeling that exact same emotion of like, what are you going to do? This is impossible now. Like, you can't take down Voldemort without Dumbledore.
Well, I think, and we could talk more about it in the spoiler section, but I think the members of the Order that are still up and active right now, mm-hmm. including Hagrid, are probably looking at Dumbledore right now and thinking the exact same thing. What are we going to do?
Yeah, because there's no second in command.
He was untouchable. Mm-hmm. Hagrid, who just fended off however many Death Eaters that were attacking his hut. Hagrid, who just is letting spells bounce off of him like he's Superman. Mm-hmm. He doesn't think he's invincible. He thinks Albus Dumbledore was invincible. Mm-hmm. He's untouchable.
Well, because he's only ever given evidence that he is.
Yeah. If he's gone, what are we going to do?
Right. Right.
Like, we are not him. So it's a problem. And that's not the only problem. Because Harry thinks about it, and he's kneeling on something hard. Mm-hmm. And he goes to pick up the locket. He notices the locket. He notices really quickly something is wrong. He notices that there's no ornate S. It's open already.
It doesn't feel as heavy.
Doesn't feel as heavy. It's not as big as the one he remembers in the memory. Which, again, good on Harry for being observant in the memories when he was supposed to be. But he finds a note in the locket. And that note says, "To the Dark Lord, I know I will be dead long before you read this, but I want you to know that it was I who discovered your secret. I have stolen the real Horcrux and intend to destroy it as soon as I can. I face death in the hope that when you meet your match, you will be mortal once more. R-A-B.
Do you remember the internet going nuts trying to figure out what RAB meant or who it stood for?
Oh, yeah.
Or like what it was?
Oh, yeah. For like years.
Like
until 7.
2 years. 2
Yeah.
years it took for us to figure out who he was. And it was killing us.
I remember combing through books with all of the Harry Potter fandom and going on chat rooms and seeing every wild theory as to who R.A.B. is and what the note means. Because there's a lot in that note, by the way.
Right. I mean, like the fact that he was able to discover his secret, and I mean, that's obviously a reference to the Horcruxes. He's aware of the Horcrux. No one else seems to have been aware of.
The chapter does end on a somber note as Harry has tears in his eyes and hears Fang's howl in the background.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you know, Dumbledore just essentially died for nothing. We don't have the Horcrux. We have this note that is now giving us another unknown. Voldemort won this one, even if Voldemort wasn't there.
Yeah. No, Voldy definitely won this battle 100%. He laments the fact that Albus weakened himself so severely for a fake locket. That's, I think, another thing that just adds to Harry's mixture of grief and pain and frustration.
I think he just feels hollow. You know, it's too much once again at once. And now since he doesn't have Dumbledore to help him process it, it's just like, I'm empty. You know?
It's like you're feeling so many emotions that you feel none. You know, that kind of thing. So that's how we end this chapter of just excitement, and then the come down from it, the withdrawal of your adrenaline is now gone, and you're left with this aftermath, and you can't believe it, even though you're looking straight at it. And
It's a knife in your gut.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, how do our characters rebound from this? We will have to go to the next chapter to find out. Which,
On that happy note.
which is what all of us did when we read this chapter. We immediately flipped to the next page and was like, what happens now? However, you're going to have to wait a week. But if you want some spoiler conversation, we have some spoilers to dip into. So we will be right back after this break sound. Before we get to our break sound, I'd like to acknowledge our friend Andy, who helps us produce our intros and our break sounds. If you want to hear more of Andy's work and like Formula One racing, check out the Outlap F1 podcast. It's your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. You can find them wherever you listen to podcasts, and they even have a YouTube page. So check out Andy, Cody, John, James, and Deanna, and join them on the Outlap.
Where is he? Where's my 1-1?
All right, so we are back with the spoiler section of Chapter 28, Flight of the Prince, and we are going to start with that prince, Severus Snape. We noted a couple of times how he took particular exception to being called a coward. And I think this has a couple of different aspects to it. One, I think it is touching back on some of his insecurities growing up. And if you really want to get into the deep psycho analysis of one Severus Snape, I mean, I think he might sometimes feel as though he is a coward because of maybe what he did not do when he was at home as a child and he witnessed some not so nice things happening in his home. So he might think of himself as a coward, and he's trying to tell himself, I am not, I am better than that, but it still probably hits a chord there. Obviously, his history with James and Sirius and Lupin there's a whole therapy, probably textbook that you could write on
Especially
those experiences.
having James's son accuse him of being a coward. It's like, that's a level of therapy. It's like a whole onion that needs to be unpeeled there.
If you're a psychiatrist or a psychologist and you're happening to listen to this, I would be intrigued as to what your opinion on Severus Snape is. I'm sure there's probably a YouTube of some therapist somewhere discussing the intricacies of Severus Snape, because
He'd be an interesting case study.
there's a lot to unpack there. But also, I think what's at play in this scene is Harry is attacking, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally by calling him a coward. And Snape is like, kid, you don't even understand what I am doing, and I can't even defend myself appropriately because I can't tell you what's going on.
On multiple levels. I mean, we know Harry less than 24 hours ago has learned this information about how Snape, his actions led to the death of James and Lily. He has no idea that Snape has love for Lily. So, I mean, literally Snape protected him through this when he was yelling at that one Death Eater to not attack Harry, that, Voldemort remember his instructions. Like, he didn't have to do that. He's still doing what Dumbledore asked him to, of protecting Harry Potter and protecting the memory of Lily. But there's also the level of Dumbledore wanted him to do this.
To your point, there's also the continued actual teaching to Harry of, like, you need to shut your mouth and close your mind.
Yeah, like, you have no hope of defeating any of us unless you do that. Like, this is my last lesson to you, and it's literally just to help you survive.
Yeah. It's unfortunate because it's the correct lesson, but sometimes you can say the right thing, as good of a teacher as you may be. Mm-hmm. You could be the best teacher in the literal world, but you might be the wrong person to give the lesson.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at here. Snape is teaching the correct lesson, and he's trying to help Harry survive there, but Harry doesn't want to hear that from him.
Ironically, he would hear it from the book, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was okay with it when it wasn't Snape.
Yeah.
Now...
Do you think he goes back to the book now and is, like, so distrustful of everything in it and like, criticizes everything that the prince ever wrote down because he's like, that was Snape?
Oh, now it's got a tinge to it that you can't scrub that clean enough. It's going to be always just dirty.
I wonder if Hermione would ironically be more accepting of the book because she'd know it was written by Snape.
When are you asking Hermione? Now?
Not right now,
now, no.
But knowing that, like, he was our professor. And
give her a year, and give her a year, and she's much more.
Once they all know, like, Snape was on our side, sure. But just in general, like, knowing he was our professor and therefore knowledgeable about his subject, knowing that he wrote down everything in the Prince book, like, I guess I'll trust it a little bit more. I do feel for Snape with this because he just did something that was requested of him that he did not want to do. He knows he's about to rejoin the Death Eaters and has to remain undercover with them without the outlet of Dumbledore to speak to in confidence. And to have this kid who he is trying to protect be like, you're a coward, you won't even face me, and blah, blah, blah. It's just like, child, you have no idea.
Do you think, real question, do you think, this will probably be a future poll when we get to that eventual chapter, but do you think that if Snape's actions and reasons for redemption aren't tied to Lily, if they aren't tied to Lily, does this redemption arc for Snape hit better with the fandom? People don't give Snape the credit he deserves for all of the work he's done here and is doing. They are like, okay, he did that good thing, but I hate him. I'm like, okay. But I think those people are basing that on his reasons being, I loved Lily, therefore I always hated James, therefore I hate his son. If you take the Lily out of it, and you're just like, he's a double agent for Dumbledore, and he's doing a lot of behind-the-scenes, very dangerous work That and yes, he does some bad things, but I hate to tell people this. There are spies and undercover agents that do some not so great things for the greater good of putting down an organization or whatever.
I guess if we were going to go down that route, he'd have to pull an RAB of being, I'm not turning away from the dark side because of Lily and what happened to her. I'm turning away from the dark side because I see how dark this is getting and I realize this is not okay. And if he turns to Dumbledore and gives himself over as being a double agent and then does all of this to protect Harry because he knows that's what Voldemort is after, and then kills Dumbledore for Dumbledore at Dumbledore's request, I feel like at that point the fandom would still be like accepting of him. I
just feel like a lot of people in the Harry Potter fandom don't buy his redemption. Am I wrong in saying that?
I don't know. I mean, Severus Snape is such a complicated man because there is all that trauma from his childhood on. There is no forgiveness for some of the ways he has treated his students. It's just flat out abusive. He obviously does not get along well with others, but he does have love and he does do things that are for the greater good.
As much as he hates Harry, and he has his reasons for hating Harry and his entire family,
he still protects him.
He still does the job.
Yeah.
He does the job in the heat of the moment here.
Begrudgingly and not happily, but like he still does it.
He does the job though.
Yeah.
Can you imagine looking at a kid and just seeing like
your worst enemy, your biggest bully ever?
Your biggest rival ever. The person who, because he looks like a spitting image of James.
Other than his eyes.
Yes. Again, throw out the love of Lily Potter. Uh-huh. Throw that out. If Lily was just a really nice, caring girl who was his friend at Hogwarts, who was the only one who actually gave him any actual real thought. Mm-hmm. Just that.
Mm-hmm. No, like, crush on her?
No. Like, throw out the romantic side of it. Mm-hmm. If it was just your mother was the only person who was ever kind to me.
Yeah, my first friend.
And I think that alone is worth a loyalty and a debt that a lot of times can never be repaid. If you're in your darkest moments and there's one person in this world that's like, how are you doing today? Mm-hmm. Like, what's going on with you? Mm-hmm. Can we go like somewhere and just talk and hang out? Like, we don't have to like worry about anything for like 10 minutes.
No, it definitely shows the power of caring
to a person who is really struggling. That one person can make a massive difference. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it has to be romantic, which I think is where a lot of people have that like
ick factor.
Yeah. Of like, oh, I really don't like that. And if that's the reason he's doing this, it's not good. But I think the issue with Lily was never him as a person. It was his tendency to drift towards the darker side of magic.
No, I don't think Lily saw it like that, but I think fans see this as like she chose James Potter and you're still longing for her and thinking about her and chasing her and putting her up on this pedestal. Right. That's where it gets into that creepy stalker that you can't ever get rid of vibe. And that's dangerous in the real world, so it's a big turnoff for women to see him like that.
We'll have to see where this eventually goes and get into the specifics, because it could just be a thing of how you look on it. If you're looking at this from a James point of view, he's a stalker, and he's creepy. Mm-hmm. If you're looking at it from a Severus point of view, you could be looking at it like, no, she was nice to me, and I liked having that in my life.
Or also from Snape's point of view, I'm trying to protect her from this jerk that
he's
stealing her.
He's
away.
Not a kind man, or he's not a kind kid. I mean, he
becomes
obviously
a man, but
he eventually becomes a good man.
A bit of an egotistical brat.
Yeah, James was not a great kid, and thus Lily didn't like him either for a long time. So I mean, I guess the whole coward thing. There's a lot going back to how we even started this conversation.
I will say it using that as the word choice is so smart, just because when you read it back again, like the first time you're reading it, you're probably thinking of that aspect of the 4-on-1 with James and those types of things. Reading it back, knowing what Dumbledore asked of him, there's that extra layer of like, no, he just had to do something horrific, but he still did it because he's not a coward. He's a hero.
To tell anyone that's fighting this war, honestly, if we're being completely objective about it, to say that anyone fighting in this war is a coward is incorrect. Either side. Death Eater or Order of the Phoenix or whoever, because they're putting their lives on the line for whatever side they're on. Coward, I don't know that that's the most accurate description you could throw out there. But in Snape's case, not only is he doing a particularly dangerous job in general, just being a spy, which way you want to define that, whether he's a spy for Voldy against Dumbledore or a spy for Dumbledore against Voldy, whichever, that takes an incredible amount of courage just to do that job. And then you look at how other Death Eaters look to him, and you see how other Death Eaters look at Voldy, and what he's doing to Voldy is a whole other level of courage. Not one other Death Eater, I don't care who you bring up, Bellatrix, Yaxley, Lucius, whoever, they're not gonna dare defy Voldy ever. And he is really standing up against him. It's a whole other level of courage, but I digress.
We still got to talk about RAB.
We still have to talk about RAB. So that note had a lot to dive into. And what are your thoughts?
So he got his dark mark at age 16, which I think is interesting because it shows Malfoy was not Voldemort's first teen recruit. And also proves Ron and Hermione wrong that Voldemort does go after teenagers if he wants to. He was asked by Voldemort if he could borrow Creature to go test the magic of the cave that he had set up. And Voldemort used Creature to drink the potion, put in the locket, and, refill the potion. Voldemort escaped while Creature was being dragged to the bottom of the lake, but Regulus Black, RAB, had ordered Creature to return home afterwards. And so the apparition magic of the house elf allowed him to leave the cave, whereas a normal wizard would not be able to apparate out because of that type of magic. So it was Voldemort underestimating the magic of a creature he deems lesser than humans.
The undertone of house elf magic in this entire series is incredible.
Don't underestimate those house elves. So Creature did come back to the House of Black, and Regulus ordered him eventually to show him the cave after he figured out what the locket must have meant. He told Creature to take him there, and he told Creature after Regulus drank the potion, Creature, you take the Horcrux, you leave me, you return home, you don't tell anybody where I am, and your job is to destroy it. Which, when you think about it, I know when we first meet Creature in book 5, it's this weirdo house elf who's just so, racist against the Muggleborns and is so twisted and dark like the Slytherins that came from the Black family. But Creature had to endure so much. I mean, he had the physical, punishment of having to drink the potion and having to relive the memories and feel the hot pain that came from drinking it. He got physical punishment on himself for failing to destroy the Horcrux over and over and over and over again. But he also had the emotional punishment because he wasn't allowed to tell the family where Regulus went, and he saw how it was destroying his mistress, not knowing where her favorite son has gone. So it's just Creature as a character, there's so much more to him than what meets the eye, which is kind of crazy to think about when we first meet him. It said he was only 17 or 18 years old when he died.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because I guess, like, I think it's so sad that Sirius never knew the truth about him. Because he did have the memory of Regulus as just like, ugh, my Slytherin
perfect
focus
Slytherin brother, yeah.
son or brother who was just like, tried to get in with the Death Eaters and he got in too deep and he probably tried to get out and then they just killed him and he probably wasn't important enough to kill by Voldemort. It was probably just some like lower level Death Eater, and it's just like, well, he was dumb. And it's like, no, he actually was one of the braver ones, if not the bravest, to be able to turn around and betray Voldemort. It led to his death in a way that I don't know if Voldemort ever knew about. But it's really sad that it was only 18 years old when that happened.
It shows a lot for him to have such, I don't even want to call it a change of heart, a change of character. Mm-hmm. Where he decided, like, no, this isn't right. This isn't what I want to be. Especially
coming from the Black family, where so much emphasis was placed on blood purity. When you have been raised in a household with very specific views that have been ingrained upon you from the start, whether it be racism or homophobia or whatever the case may be, to have that drilled into your brain year after year after year, but then reach the point where you're like, no, this is not right. To go against everything that you have been taught is very difficult to do. And it takes a certain amount of bravery that I don't think they would have attributed with Slytherins.
This is where we can have this talk with Julie someday about the Black family tree as a whole. Mm-hmm. But do you have anything else?
Nope.
All right. We will wrap it up here. Thank you all for listening. Please let us know your thoughts by commenting on Spotify or by reaching out to us on Twitter or Instagram at HogwartsAPod. You can also find us on YouTube by searching at HogwartsAPod. The YouTube is still roughly new, so find us on that. Otherwise, if you want to support us financially, you could click the support this podcast link and you can set up a donation, which really helps because this is a lot of time and energy that goes into this, so we appreciate all of that as well. Otherwise, leave a 5-star review, leave a like, and share this podcast with all of your friends and family and random strangers and whoever else who love Harry Potter. We really appreciate that too, getting all over the world.
I told all my new students that we do a podcast.
There you go.
Because the school year has just started. And they were like, you like Harry Potter? I'm like, yeah, I'm on a podcast. They're like, what? So if any of them are listening, hi.
It's not hard to figure out you like Harry Potter when you hang the banners in your classroom.
I did post a picture of it on not Instagram, on Twitter the other day. And we got a reply from somebody else who has a Harry Potter classroom. So if you are a teacher out there with a Harry Potter inspired classroom, even if it's just a tiny area of it, send us a picture.
Yeah, shoot us a picture. We'll post it on Instagram or Twitter. So with that, we will wrap it up here for Chapter 28, and we will be back with Chapter 29, the penultimate chapter of Half-Blood Prince. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at HogwartsAPod.